Hello friends, we start off a series of lectures here on India since independence. There are three books which you will hear of for this topic. One is India since independence by Bipan Chandra. There is another book, Political Science NCERT for class 12, Politics in India since independence. And there's a third book, this is India after Gandhi by Ramchandra Guha. All three books are good. The most relevant book for your preparation would be India since independence Bipan Chandra. The political science NCERT is brief. It does not give a huge comprehensive coverage. The India after Gandhi is a quite detailed text, but it has many political level discussions which may not be relevant from exam perspective. So for that matter, if you want to study this topic, the best book you can refer to is India since independence by Bipan Chandra. Right now we are starting off a series here. The objective here is that the book has to be studied thoroughly. For any exam preparation, the more in-depth study you do of a particular book is more relevant than doing so many materials. So that's why we pick up this one text. We'll look at each chapter in detail. I will let you know all the important parts in the book so you can have your own text, do the underlinings as per the instructions and as done in this text, and you can reread, study it and imbibe it in your minds as much as possible. So that will help you in writing good answers from this topic. In this text now, the first 5 chapters which are covered here are on colonial legacy, national freedom struggle and its legacy, and the constitution and its developments. Now these are covered in modern history and covered in polity. So from this text, we will skip those chapters. We come to the crux of this topic, India since independence, and we start from chapter 6. That is the initial years. 15th August 1947, the first day of free India. In a memorable address to the Constituent Assembly, Jawaharlal Nehru made his famous speech, The Tryst with Destiny. He said, "Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At the stroke of midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. A moment comes, which comes but rarely in history, when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. It is fitting at this solemn moment that we take the pledge of dedication to the service of India and her people and to the still larger cause of humanity. We end today a period of ill fortune and India discovers herself again." So this was his famous speech. Post-independence, we faced many problems which cropped up. The immediate problems were territorial and administrative integration of the princely states, which got into India one by one. The communal riots that accompanied partition. The rehabilitation of nearly 6 million refugees who migrated from Pakistan. Protection of Muslims threatened by communal gangs. Need to avoid war with Pakistan and the communist insurgency. The communists had declared violent struggle against the newly formed government in independent India. Restoration of law and order and political stability. Putting in place an administrative system which was threatened with breakdown because of partition and illogical division of army and higher bureaucracy, virtually on religious lines. So Nehru rightly declared in 1947, first things must come first, and the first thing is the security and stability of India. There were many other prominent leaders apart from Nehru who built up India in those initial years. The prominent ones, of course, are the Deputy Prime Minister and the then Home Minister, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, the first President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, C. Rajagopalachari. At the state level too, there were various prominent leaders, Govind Ballabh Pant in UP, B.C. Roy in West Bengal, B.C. Kher and Morarji Desai from Bombay. All these people together formed India what we see today. Now the national movement had itself had qualities which brought us together. It had brought different regions, sections of society and ideological currents around a common political agenda to get the British out from India. Outside the Congress too, there were other leaders also, socialists like Acharya Narendra Dev and Jayaprakash Narayan, communist leaders like P.C. Joshi and Ajay Ghosh, liberal communists like Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, the Dalit leader Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, On the periphery, apart from these prominent leaders who were outside Congress in other political parties, there were also other non-political leaders who played a very important role post-independence too. Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, Dr. Zakir Hussain, V.K. Krishnamenon, who had struggled for India's freedom from Britain. Another positive feature apart from the national freedom struggle bringing us together was the existence of Congress, a strong, democratically functioning, India-wide national party with an established leadership and deep roots and strong support among the people. Except the Communist Party, which we saw had raised insurgency, its authority or legitimacy was questioned by none. Congress leadership also widened the base of the Constituent Assembly and the government by inclusion of distinguished and representative non-congressmen. Even within the first cabinet of Nehru, which comprised of 14 members, 5 were non-congressmen. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and Shyama Prasad Mukherjee had opposed Congress before 1947. The 3 others, John Mathai, C.H. Bhabha and Shanmukham Chetty, were other 3 leaders also who were included into the first cabinet of Free India. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was also made the chairman of the drafting committee of the constitution. Dr. S. Radhakrishnan became the first vice president of India and the second president of India. He was never a member of Congress. Congress was also all inclusive. Right now we start off with the first problem which we faced. This was the background of the freedom struggle and its legacy and how it helped in having Congress as a central political party which was bringing all factors together. Still, partition created its troubles. The accession of princely states created its troubles. There were linguistic barriers too in consolidation of India, which will be later covered in these chapters in this book. The first problem which we faced in integration of India, apart from partition, was accession to princely states. And this started pre-independence also. Before 1947, many princely states got into India. So right now we'll look at the first issue which is discussed in this, accession of princely states. In colonial India, nearly 40% of the territory was occupied by 56 small and large states ruled by princes who enjoyed varying degrees of autonomy under the system of British paramountcy. In 1947, many of the large princely states began to dream of independence and to scheme for it. Now, the reason for this was also a commitment made by Clement Attlee, then Prime Minister of Britain. He made an announcement in Feb 1947, under which he said that India would be freed on 15th August 1947. British would leave India and hand over power to all entities. Means India, Pakistan and all princely states would be free. So it did not put a compulsion on the princely states to either join India or Pakistan. Rather, it said we would give freedom to all. So the princely states now started harboring dreams of having independence. Independent entity as India and Pakistan. This was a huge challenge which was tackled by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, assisted by even then Governor General of India, Lord Mountbatten and his secretary V.K. Krishnamenon. The nationalist leaders in British India and in the states rejected this claim of any princely state to attain independence. They repeatedly declared that the independence for a princely state was not an option. The only option open being whether the state would accede to India or Pakistan on the basis of contiguity of its territory and the wishes of its people. National movement itself had long held that the political power belonged to the people of the state and not its ruler, and that the people of the state were an integral part of the Indian nation. So with great skill and masterful diplomacy, using both persuasion and pressure, threatening and even pleasing, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel succeeded in integrating hundreds of princely states within the Indian Union in 2 stages. There were around 552 princely states then in India. Before 15th August 1947, 549 princely states were completely integrated into India. 3 created trouble, which we famously know about. They were Hyderabad, Junagadh and Jammu and Kashmir. So some states showed wisdom and realism and perhaps a degree of nationalism and joined the Constituent Assembly in April 1947. But a majority of the princes had stayed away. A few such as Travancore, Bhopal and Hyderabad publicly announced their desire to claim an independent status. Patel's first step was to appeal to the princes whose territories fell inside India to accede to the Indian Union in 3 subjects. These 3 subjects were foreign relations, defense and communications, which were centralized. For a country should have central authority on it. And even before this, under the Britishers too, these 3 subjects were under the British control rather than the princely states. So Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel claimed that let us take over these 3 subjects and internally you can govern your own princely states. He also gave an implied threat that he would not be able to restrain the impatient people of the states and the government's terms after 15th August 1947 would be stiffer. So this also put some fear in the minds of the princely state rulers and they wanted to accede into India as soon as possible. So fearful of the rising tide of the people's movement in their states and of the more extreme agenda of the right radical wing of the Congress and also Patel's reputation for firmness and even ruthlessness, the princes responded to Patel's appeal and all but 3 of them, Junagadh, Jammu and Kashmir and Hyderabad, acceded to India on 15th August 1947. By the end of 1948, the 3 recalcitrant states had also acceded to India. Now looking at the three states and what problems they created, the first one which we look at is Junagadh. Now Junagadh had the Nawab and the Nawab had announced accession of his state to Pakistan on 15th August 1947, even though majority of the people were Hindus and they wanted to join India. Pakistan on its part also accepted Junagadh's accession and the people of the state organized a popular movement. They forced the Nawab to flee and established a provincial government there. Provisional government. A plebiscite was also held because India had its stand that they would accede princely states to India based on the will of the people. So an election, a plebiscite was held where people would vote whether they wanted to join India or Pakistan, and the people overwhelmingly voted in favor of India. And finally, in February 1948, Junagadh became a part of India. So one accession was done. The second state which created trouble, Jammu and Kashmir, which we discuss here. Jammu and Kashmir bordered both India and Pakistan. Its ruler, Hari Singh, was a Hindu, but nearly 75% of the population was Muslim. Now, Hari Singh wanted to stay independent. He had declared his desire for independence. But on 22nd October 1947, when winter had just onset, several Pathan tribesmen led unofficially by the Pakistan army officers invaded Kashmir. In panic on 24th October, Maharaja appealed to India for military assistance. Even at this stage, Nehru said he cannot accede Jammu and Kashmir into India without ascertaining the will of the people. But Lord Mountbatten, the Governor General, said that under international law, you cannot send your troops to Kashmir if the state is not part of your territory. So that's why on 26th October 1947, Maharaja acceded to India and the instrument of accession was signed. Even the then National Conference leader, Abdullah, who was a political leader in Jammu and Kashmir, was installed as the head of the state's administration, and then accession took place, and then India sent its troops to Jammu and Kashmir. So this was in conformity with the advice from Lord Mountbatten. A referendum, it was said, would be held in Jammu and Kashmir once the peace and law and order is restored in the valley. So, but then it was realized 30th December 1947 the conflict had escalated and there were fears of a full-scale war, and at this time Lord Mountbatten gave a suggestion that the Kashmir problem should be referred to the UN Security Council, and it should be demanded that aggression of Pakistan should end and Pakistan should vacate the territory which it had occupied till then, which is known as Pakistan occupied Kashmir. But of course, it did not happen. This turned out to be one of the worst mistakes committed by Nehru. The UN Security Council favored Jammu and Kashmir issue. Pakistan was favored, and US, UK, which were allies of Pakistan, they did not give a firm stand and tended to side with Pakistan. On 31st December 1948, it passed a resolution which both Pakistan and India accepted, and a ceasefire was honored, and this ceasefire still prevails. In 1951, a UN resolution was passed providing for a referendum under UN supervision. after Pakistan has withdrawn its troops from that part of Kashmir under its control. The resolution still remains infructuous because Pakistan